make sure that it's streaming?
We are one shy. Councilman Brady said he's on his way, though.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, good evening, I guess technically. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 13th, 2023 meeting of the West Ashby Revitalization Commission meeting. Appreciate everybody's attendance tonight, and hopefully we can get to item number 2 tonight. I'm trying to get that taken care of for quite a while. And so we don't have a quorum quite yet. We're one shy. So we're going to skip items 2 and 3 for approval of the minutes. So we can move forward with the item number 4, Magnolia Area Character or Appraisal. And Ken has requested some information about that. And Eric, are you going to follow back up to that part of it?
Yes, sir. So this is a area character appraisal that was done by Kenneth Meralda. This is continuing our current move through West Ashley to categorize and research the history of the different subdivisions and neighborhoods that have not had one of these done yet. So far, we have Old Windermere and Burnstown, along with Avondale. Avondale was another one done by Commissioner Meralda, and this was his next one. I will go ahead and turn this over to him now.
Thank you, Eric. So just to give a little bit more background, we completed the Avondale Area Character Appraisal in November of 2021. It was presented to this commission for endorsement, sent to Planning Commission to be accepted as a resource. After the completion of that project, we had a graduate intern who needed additional work. He had worked on Avondale, and he requested that West Ashley Connects as a nonprofit would provide another project for him. And so we chose Magnolia because it was directly adjacent to Avondale, relatively similar in character and age. And I had been in touch with the neighborhood president, and she had expressed interest in the neighborhood president at that time, Bridget Lucier. So that's why we decided to proceed with Magnolia. So we can move perhaps to page 6. Just an introduction talking about the process of creating it, giving some credit to historical contributions made by my fellow commissioners, Charlie and Diane, Donna Jacobs, and Boodle, and some other contributors. Teresa Tidestrom, unfortunately, is not here with us tonight. James Ward is a board member of West Ashley Connects, Joshua Petro, who is our intern, and of course, it would not have been possible without Eric Coleman as the coordinator for the project. So the first thing we did on page 7 was just define the difference between the subdivision and the neighborhood. The neighborhood boundaries were created in 2010 for the neighborhood council, for the application to the neighborhood council, and that was drawn up by Bridget. And she intentionally included the commercial parcels, the Magnolia Park and Community Garden, which I believe at that time had not been rehabbed into the community spaces today, along with the schoolhouse, cemeteries, and part of the bikeway. It also includes church and the global property, which we're going to discuss a little bit later on. Just to distinguish that from the Magnolia subdivision, which was just a single piece of land that was subdivided into the neighborhood part of the. Let's go quickly to page 9, just to show the location within West Ashley, so we're all familiar with the neighborhood that we're referring to. It's right in the heart of inner West Ashley. And then beginning on page 10, we just create a chronology of the history, just as we did for Avondale, beginning in 1670. It was a Lord Proprietor's plantation, and much of the information in here comes from work published by my colleague, Ms. Hamilton, in her recent book, Variability, Audacity of the People. We just broke it down into some very condensed dates, just to give an overview of how the land evolved over time. And there's a diagram on page 11 that highlights a couple features that are significant. There's a cemetery that was noted on the plat, which is believed to be the burial place of Dr. John Lining. And then there's also an old creek bed called Old Town Creek that currently, in the present time, has flooding issues that Ms. Lucia related to me. So we wanted to highlight the existence of spills as far back as 1826. Through the Civil War, it remained a plantation, and it was later divided up around 1885. I believe that goes on to page 14. Mary Taft, who purchased it after the Civil War, began dividing up 10-acre tracts and then smaller 50 by 100 lots. And a significant portion was purchased by the SBI synagogue to be used as a cemetery. The gatehouse of that cemetery, we believe, is the oldest remaining structure within the Magnolia area. And a portion of that cemetery is also used by Emmanuel Conservative Jewish Synagogue. So Ms. Taft also sold off property, or Mrs. Taft sold off property largely to African Americans, but also to some whites, Germans, Chinese. There was a mix of people who resided in the area. There was a church founded, Jerusalem RMUE, formed Methodist. Sorry, a little foreign to me, but I'm learning. And so that was founded there in 1897. And then Mary Matthews Just was a very prominent figure in the area, passed away in 1902. 1904 was the first federal map that shows the road structure, and it really just shows Magnolia and Sycamore as existing, and we see the blue outline of the neighborhood as it is today. Those roads are very, very old roads. As we move along in time, we see that houses start to fill in, roads are starting to be built. The Maryville section of the neighborhood was today Maryville, then was the town of Maryville. Was growing at that time. The railroad, Seaport Railroad is there. And we can still see that creek kind of at the top, that's water coming in to what is then farmland. Cemetery is marked on there as well, with just a few scattered houses. The town of Maryville boundaries expanded to include this area. Most people will think of it only as on the actual side of the river or above the Seaboard Airline Railway, which is now Bikeway, but it did in fact extend all the way to the corner of Magnolia and Sycamore, which is that very distinctive point at the bottom of the diagram, the purple outline and the blue delineation of the town boundary. The Goebel House, which is a very prominent house on Magnolia Road, anyone who's driven by has noticed it, was constructed in 1925 on a 2-acre tract, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the town of Maryville was dissolved in 1936 by the General Assembly.
Go back to that one point.
Yes, sir.
For the general assembly.
Yes,
What did you say there?
the town of Maryville was dissolved in
Dissolved.
1936. 1939, we have some aerial imagery. This is the first photography available from the air. Today, these are done by satellite, but that time it was done by airplane. And we can see that it was carved up into small farm plots, some trees, some small buildings and houses, undeveloped, unsurprisingly, cemetery tracts there as well. And then on the following page, we see a much more detailed plat survey that was commissioned, which shows the lot delineations, some streets that have been kind of filled in around it, cemetery, and very clearly shows the 50 by 100 lots from in 1886 as very prominent in the Maryville area. The Albemarle School was also created in 1944. So the Albemarle School shows up on aerial imagery. Today we know it as the schoolhouse, and this commission is met there. My first meeting on the commission was there. Around the same time, Leon Steinberg purchased 36 acres around the schoolhouse and around the cemetery to create Magnolia. So this area of photography is 1949, and it shows the construction of the subdivision in progress, a few roads and perhaps a few small buildings. Following slide, you just see how it's divided up. So the official plat survey delineating land belonging to the Goebels, the cemetery, the school, and some other homesteads. And the neighborhood boundaries, reiterating a little bit of what we said before, there was a subdivision, but also a larger neighborhood. So we can pass through these relatively quickly. I mean, they're very repetitive of what we did for Avondale. Age of the roads, road ownership, multimodal infrastructure, St. Andrews Boulevard street section. And we can go back to any one of these in detail if anyone would like to, but just to illustrate the diligence that we showed to the character of the area. Age of the structures begins on page 30. 31 looks into architectural styles. This neighborhood has two predominant architectural styles and a couple examples of other styles, but it's predominantly ranch and minimal traditional, which is very, very typical of that time period. And just as with Avondale, we broke down different architectural styles with definitions and examples from the neighborhoods. With each one of the houses photographed here is in the neighborhood with the description of it next to it. We provided facade materials. This is the primary facade material. And that's noted at the bottom where some structures may have more than one, but we were trying to kind of gauge the primary material. Height of the structures, we also looked at lot coverage, units per parcel, so density effectively. And then on page 39, we have Global House. And the Global House is very unique architecturally because it resembles the King House that's very well known, Avenue of Oaks on the Ashleyville side. Both were owned by very prominent white people who moved into the town of Maryville. And they're architecturally very, very similar. And the owners of them purchased the land from the same individuals. So we believe that they're sister houses, if you will. And they're the only two remaining ones that are known. The land that the Global House is on is exactly 1850 by 100 Maryville lots to comprise a 2-acre parcel. And what that basically explains is that the Global family bought an entire block of this neighborhood to make their home. Henry Goebel was a musician and he was prominent in the Charleston Renaissance. That information, I believe, was presented to TRC for a recent subdivision of the land. So that history is documented there. Schoolhouse we wanted to highlight because it received a Carlopolis Award in West Ashley, which perhaps people don't usually think of West Ashley as having homes or structures worthy of that type of historic preservation, but it did receive one. And it was originally a segregated school, it was desegregated, and it currently serves as the offices of the Charleston Park Conservancy, which manages the community garden adjacent to it. Next building we documented was what's called the Marsley Classroom. And this information was originally provided to me by Sue Griffin, who worked with the city for many, many years. And I'm thankful that she, upon her retirement, took the time to talk through a lot of the history of the neighborhood that she remembered because she attended the Albemarle School. And she remembered this building, which is now rotting, was the special education classroom of the Albemarle School. And the teacher was very well renowned for the way that she worked with students who had special needs at that time. And so we take it to calling it the Marsley Classroom. That's how she referred to it. Perhaps that's how it was known at that time. It was a brick masonry building that likely dates to the early 1920s. Post office, just noting that the only significance is it reflects the prominence that West Ashley had grown to by the 1970s. There had previously been 3 earlier post offices, one in Ashleyville, which was within the town of Maryville at the time, 2 in Avondale, one in Avondale, one in Ashley Forest, and this one was representing the significant growth of the area. Jurisdictional boundaries, the entire neighborhood is within the city of Charleston. It was originally within, land was within the town of Maryville. If you look at zoning, racial restrictions. So when I created the Avondale area character appraisal, Mayor Tecklenburg specifically asked about racial restrictions, and so we made a point of including it in this document, anticipating that the question would arise for this neighborhood as well. And indeed, there were restrictions, not for the entire neighborhood as it's known today, but for the entire subdivision that was created in 1949 and 1950. So any parcels that were divided as part of that project were subject to these racial restrictions. Any parcels that were not part of that project were not. So Goble House, church, the schoolhouse and cemeteries and some of the commercial buildings. Land uses, so this is looking at how the land is actually used, not how it's zoned and not the future land use, but how it functions. So we separate out residential, civic and religious, park and green space, and commercial. And then the future land use map is taken strictly from Charleston City Plan in 2021. Comprehensive plan. Green spaces, this was an element that Bridget was very passionate about us including. She wanted it very well known that, you know, backyard park is in the heart of the neighborhood and it's very important to the residents. It became a city park in 1973, but it was originally platted in 1950. Magnolia Park and Community Garden. I did highlight where it is shown on the 1826 platted. There is a cemetery area back of it, and it was originally the schoolyard for the Albemarle School. It was redeveloped in 2013. The bikeway, Bridget had also mentioned that she was very intentional, including the bikeway within the neighborhood boundaries, because the homes along it relate to it and use it routinely for recreation purposes. She put a little bit of the plan list actually in there. And then the tree canopy coverage is a unique slide that we included again at Bridget's request, looking at aerial imagery that the city of Charleston produced for all of West Ashley and isolating out the section for Magnolia just to show the coverage over the streets of the homes. The wetlands I had mentioned earlier also received a slide. And then we just concluded, just as we did with Avondale, a few historical trends. Magnolia neighborhood reflects a trend of agricultural and suburban land development, which we discussed at the March meeting of this commission as well, which former truck farms and plantations were converted to residential uses with the post-World War II era. Roads on the interior of the neighborhood, platted for the subdivision, are owned locally, while major roads that form the boundaries of the neighborhood are owned by the South Carolina Department of Transportation. Magnolia Civic Club was formed around 1950 and became inactive in 1970s, likely as original families from the neighborhood moved elsewhere and children moved out. This trend is also seen in Avondale, where the Civic Club was created in 1945, fell into a period of inactivity when many of the original families moved away. We talk about creek systems dating back to the colonial era, reuse of antebellum plantation cemetery, probable John Lyman burial site, backyard park, neighborhood park comparable to Arcadian Park in Avondale, Wedge Park, Carolina Terrace, Godfrey Park in Moreland, and the historic Invincible Park in Maryville, Ashleyville, on the Ashleyville side, which looks at how in all of these neighborhoods where when subdivisions were created, had these little internal parks for residents. And we just calculated the median average lot size showing Magnolia, Avondale, and Maryville side by side. That about wraps it up.
So, Ken, what is the recommendation you want to go forward with?
I would like to ask this commission to endorse it the same way it endorsed the Avondale one. One, we have a quorum here tonight on our final number, so that it can be then passed to planning commission just as the Avondale one was.
Yes, sir.
Congratulate Ken, man, that's really good work. I mean, could you pinpoint when the town of Maryville transformed to becoming Asheville on one side and then Maryville on the other. Does Sandra Boulevard have anything to do with that?
Started that way. There's our expert over here.
Yeah. I'm going to defer to Ms. Hamilton on this.
We cannot answer that question. We have not been able to find a specific bit of documentation to state when the division occurred. We are thinking that as people worked and lived and what have you, over time, when you gave directions to where you live, you wanted to designate your area, you said, well, I live, close to the river, close to the Ashley River side. And so we are just speculating, but we have not been able to find any specific documentation. Because if you go back and look at some of the old plats, you will find, for example, where Milton Grant House is located, which is on the same street where Thomas Vice Carr lived on Main Street. If you check the deeds, it states that the subdivision is Maryville, even though it is on Main Street on the Ashleyville side.
Right.
And several other pieces of property we have identified on the Ashleyville side. When you check its background, it will actually state on record that it's the Maryville subdivision. Yes, yes.
The Hillsborough Plantation, how big was that?
The Hillsborough Plantation actually started at Main Street and it extends over to the Old Town Creek. And then on the other side is Sycamore Avenue. And then it's sort of diagonals into Boundary Street, which is present day Dinah Street. So we're looking from Main Street to Dinah Street. And then Old Town Creek, and then Sycamore on the other side. Donna has her hand up.
He's talking Hillsborough, it went all the way to White Oak Drive, not Maryville Bridge and Flat. Okay,
It was 500.
550 acres.
Yeah,
It's all the way to, went all the way to White Oak Drive.
But in those
I think
early,
Kenneth's
the
right.
1885.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Don, you finish?
I think Kenneth will show you on that picture right there, that's the original hill, the whole Hillsborough, not just the Hillsborough that married. The orange on that plat, you see how that. Yeah. It's 550 acres.
So I can clarify this a little bit. We have found that over time, the size of the plantation changed a little bit. Tracts were sold off, sold to neighbors, and at the time it was subdivided, it was about 550 acres. And so that extends, just as Donna explained, to about White Oak Drive. Previously, it was larger than that, but at the time it was subdivided, that was about the size.
Any other questions?
Ken, who was involved with this with you?
Well, historical background information was provided by Ms. Hamilton, Charlie Smith, Ryan Blumen, Jacobs, and Sue Griffin, as I mentioned, some oral history in there. In synthesizing the document, pulling all the information together, we had a graduate intern, Joshua Petro, James Ward, one of the board members, West Ashley Connects, Teresa Tydstrom, and Eric Paul.
Well, I just want to thank all of y'all for that very intensive and thorough appraisal, and it's very similar to what y'all did on Avondale. It sounds like John Whining has been buried like 15 different spots along. You got around, I think, pretty well afterlife. The Global House has property still maintains a good portion of its original footprint, I think. And I know that the developers have tried to come in very unsuccessfully to redevelop that land, keeping that property. And Bridget, when she was the president of the neighborhood association, was very adamant about that. So I'm wondering if there's something else we can do to put a preservation mark on there to preserve that area. And I'm sort of more curious as to the history of the family that built the house. And you mentioned he was a musician, it was a very important part of that. And also, I think we talked about a little bit about his involvement with the cities. Renaissance as well. So I think there's more interest in and when we were addressing the rezoning of that property on Winston Street, where they wanted the childcare facility, that was also, don't help me out with that, that was also the home of another prominent South Carolinian who was on the highway commission. Pete, thank you. And so it was, I mean, we have the very interesting locations of houses that sort of pocket different locations throughout West Ashley, including these sort of on examples. Both I think were built.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The time frame of the health and Winston Street was around the 1920s. Yeah.
I submitted what's called PIP form, preliminary information form, to the State Preservation Office for that house, the 1332 Ashley River Road. And they determined its eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places based on the significance of Isaac Peak and the age of the house, as you're describing, was 1930, about 1939. And yes, he was a very prominent historical figure who built Avondale, South Old Town Acres, St. Andrews Boulevard, helped get water across the Ashley River. He did many prominent things for the community.
One little anecdotal story about my entry into Magnolia in 2015 when I was canvassing and knocking on doors. An elderly gentleman answered the door and said, "I'm not selling," and he slammed the door. Hey, I'm not buying. But I think that this area, I tell you that because I think this area is very special, and the location of it is very desirable. As to live in West Ashley, he's sort of in the heart of this portion of West Ashley. And then we understand the more historical significance of it as well. And it's this Renaissance that is taking place. Schoolhouse, obviously, the garden is out there. And this is this rebirth of it. And the city has had plans for the Ackerman Park and to include the rural permanent structure for the West Ashley Farmers Market out there. And we were working with the folks at on redesigning the Sycamore property, which is sort of been stuck in neutral for some reason. Eric, again, I think who owns that property?
Grambling Brothers.
So you look at this from a holistic standpoint, and the point about the, I'm glad you didn't say that the post office was significantly important from this architectural standpoint, but it was significantly important as the prominence of government involvement in the area. One of my public administration classes I took many years ago talked about when you wanted to spur development, the push was a post office located. Because when you located a post office, you had to put in a road. And you had a road that you had access and you could find maybe another type of retail store or a stable or something that the people would come and have a need. So coming to the post office was historically a very early form of development in private government sector working together to spur development of the particular area. So I mean, historically, post offices had a real important significance in the development of the country, and having that post office in West, that's the West African post office. Not to take light of the location of. So we have I will entertain a motion that we now accept the recommendation from Ken and the staff that we adopt and recommend this go forward to the planning commission. Second. Any discussion? All right, Paul, yeah, Mr. Mayor.
This is a point of information, as you know, Councilman Waring and yourself and I just attended our budget committee meeting, and we had a report from our planning commission for their budget request for next year. And in fact, it included, funding for an architectural, historic and cultural asset inventory survey for West Ashley. And it will tie in so beautifully with, this report and the one that you did for Avondale as well. So, just thought I'd share.
You're right, Mr. Mayor. We just got through leaving a budget workshop. Ken, can you go back to the page of the building that is subject to being lost, on the Albemarle school site?
I go past it, Ken?
Can you share your comments again, now that Councilman Brady and the mayor's here, some of us have filled in the status of this building?
Yes, so this building, we believe, was originally built in the early 1900s, probably as a homestead. We have some documentation of who may have lived there. And when the Albemarle School was created, it was used as a special education classroom. The teacher was Miss Mars Luke, Elizabeth Mars Luke. Stu Griffin, who worked for the city for many, many years, related to me this history because she went to the school. She remembered that building in use. And she said that Miss Mars Luke was renowned for her work with these special needs children. There were newspaper articles that I found talking about how wonderful she was in this role. And Stu had mentioned her wish that if this building were ever to be reused or rehabilitated, that it should be named or in some way this woman should be honored for her contributions to the community. So it is sitting there in a state of abandonment. I have my own thoughts about what we could do with it that I've shared several of us in the community. But that's its current state, and I hope that we just.
Thank you. My point was, I believe we should set aside some money in the budget, in this budget, to be able to put a new roof on, at least stabilize the building and make improvements, and not gonna take that much.
I'm fine with that. I did, walk around the building after, Charlie and, brought it my attention when we did the cemetery approval. And talked with the folks at the Charleston Parks Conservancy, who really kind of operate on site, to see if they have some use for the building that they could propose to us. So, yeah, but you're right, getting a roof on it and getting it dry is the first step.
Thank you. Well done. We have a motion and a second. No other further discussion, so you can vote all those in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Well done. Can we get copies of the report?
Yes, Eric has the visual.
Yeah, very good. Did the motion include the recommendation that we stabilize the motion is. Let's retract and add as a second motion that the inclusion of the recommendation is the city allocate enough funds to stabilize the position. And I would add maybe study appropriate uses for it as well. That's it. So we retract a little bit with the modifier and the amended motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Well done. Thank you all. That really does take a lot of work, and the community should be appreciative of volunteers that who take part into this process. We have our unofficial historians running us, and I call them from time to time. Thank you all so much, Charlie and Sam, and appreciate it very much. All right, the next item on our agenda. Well, now that we have a forum, but before anybody leaves, we'll hold you all captive. Items 2 and 3, there are approval of the minutes from our 2022 meeting of January 12th, March 9th, April 18th, May 11th, July 13th, and November 9th. And for the minutes of March 8th, 2023, and I'll entertain a motion to consolidate items 2 and 3 together. Now, any further discussion to items 2 and 3? Seeing and all those in favor of approving the minutes and items 2 and 3, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you all so much. Wonderful, get that. You made Eric very happy, trust me. All right, we're on to, item number, 5, which is the design review board demolition criteria update, and I see Christopher Morgan's here. Is that your role or no? Eric's gonna take care of it? I'm telling you something. Keep it comfortable over there. All right, Eric.
All right, yes, thank you. Give me 1 second to do the screen share for those on YouTube. There we go. That should be up for them, I hope, if I did it right this time. We have 2 updates for you guys that are going to be done by me. Update regarding the design review board demolition criteria, and then a update regarding Sumar Street redevelopment. So I'll just go ahead and start off those. For the design review board, if you all remember, back in March 8th, there was a motion to request council to consider reviewing procedures within the existing boards that we have to expand protections and create sorry, that was a separate one. The one that was made here at the West Ashley Commission was that we get stronger demolition guidelines for the West Ashley area. And then also as a separate thing, creating the inventory and finding out about that one, which the mayor just mentioned is moving forward, hopefully through the budget. Since then, myself and the design review board, along with our legal staff, have been working to figure out ways to better clarify what we mean by demolition within the West Ashley area. What this amendment seeks to do is create clearer standards for the review of demolition requests, along with providing the board some better guidance for older structures that maybe don't rise above the test, but are greater than 50 years of age. A brief version of this was also presented to the Community Development Committee back about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Just letting them know that this was going to be coming forward. You guys get a little bit more in-depth than what was presented at that one. And then after this, it'll keep moving forward. So currently, just as a reminder, this is what our current demolition guidelines are within the DRB purview. And that is something that is of architectural, aesthetic features of the structure, the nature, the quality of the structure, including its architectural fabric, any historical significance, the nature and quality of the surrounding area, and the structure's contribution to the overall streetscape. That is what is being weighed against once something is said that it's 50 years, so it has to be reviewed to see if it should be demolished. What we are looking to change that out to is something that's much clearer. So now we're saying that if a structure the structure will be deemed to contribute to the historic character of the area if the structure is at least 50 years and if one of the following applies. So now it very clearly lays out what needs to be weighed against. So this way, when someone is considering whether or not they can demolish a structure, they have a much better set of regulations to weigh it against rather than just the nebulous one that we currently have, which is very, it comes to the same conclusion, but this one spells it out much clearer. So that way, before someone submits, they have a better idea of if they have a chance of getting through with it. Also, if the structure is at least 50 years or older and none of the above apply, then there still is a test against whether or not it could be demolished for other reasons, such as the physical integrity, if good faith efforts have been put forward to preserve it, things of that nature. So, and in addition to that, something else that we noticed is frequently when something is submitted, it's posted in front of the building about 7 to 9 days ahead of time. And that does not give the community very much time to come forward with history, because a lot of times that's how we're finding out about the history of these structures in West Ashley, is the community who's been in the area comes forward with it. But it's a real rush to get it into staff, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, back and forth at the board. This instead, what this does by saying it has to be posted at least 15 days prior, this really sets it on a 2 round for DRB. So if you submit it by the time of the first DRB review of the month, it won't actually be heard until the second DRB meeting of the month. So it gives much more time for the community to kind of fact check the criteria that was submitted to us and let the staff know, and also give us on staff time to start researching more in depth as well. So as I was saying, this was presented at Community Development Committee on August 17th for direction. There were some questions raised if we should include language regarding economic factors. Columbia and Savannah do have economic factors as part of theirs, where if it's deemed that the structure would not have reasonable return, it could be demolished. The kind of the difference between especially us and Columbia is the land value here. Very few structures would actually be termed to have good return on it, should that be put in there. It was appreciated by those on the committee that it does make the process clear for the applicants. There were some concerns raised though regarding affordable housing and conflicts with demolition on that one. So that may be something to again look forward into. Planning Commission will review a draft of this ordinance, I believe October, we said, Christopher? Yes, all right, October. And then if it makes it through Planning Commission and they recommend it out, it would be on the City Council in November for first reading. And then again, if there's no big alterations after that, it would go on to December for second and third reading. So, that is the update regarding that one. And let me know if you guys have questions, comments.
Let's open up with some discussion, feedback. Yes, okay.
First of all, I just want to thank you for your diligence in looking at other cities. I know you and I have discussed this several times over the last few months, probably even years. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is looking at how other cities with comparable problems have solved it. And taking into account the economic considerations of the developer, I think is really productive, because oftentimes I think we get stuck with development that we don't like because they feel frustrated that the process hasn't considered the viability of their project in the first place. So I think that was very diligent. I also just want to connect the dots. It's in my mind now that projects like this, projects like the historical inventory that you mentioned earlier, provide the context for DRB to make decisions and evaluate the value of these properties. I mean, if we're talking about architectural significance and there's one house remaining or two houses remaining, if we're talking about the Global House, two houses in all of West Ashley that from this time frame, well, the board should treat that differently, and they need to have the knowledge to do that. So these types of surveys, and hopefully a more comprehensive one, will give them the information to make those decisions. And that's feedback that I kind of come up with attending DRB and listening to the commissioners' frustrations, the board members' frustrations there. So just wanted to kind of illustrate how all of these are connected.
John, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, real quick, the 50 years, is that, 100 years, I get. 50, I just, I did my quick math, and that's, 8 years after I was born. And so I'm wondering, my house I live in now is built in 76. If I wanted to rip the garage off, I got to go through a DRB process, which will continue to prolong an already prolonged process as far as, when we're talking about any kind of construction. So I'm just, especially in the context of revitalization, I'm not talking about paved paradise if you put up a parking lot, but it just seems like this is we're adding a layer now to an already complex revitalization, redevelopment, or just development for that matter. Just a little concerned there. And the 50, especially for an urban area like West Ashley, it seems like 50 might be too aggressive. Maybe it's 75, maybe it's 100. I don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, so those are good questions and comments. I will say one, this is for our commercial design review board corridors only. So unless your house is on one of our commercial design corridors, it wouldn't be taken into account right now. So that is one element. It does pertain to any residential homes that are on the corridor though, but it would be with that. Regarding the 50 years, that is, you can see item F up here. 50 years is right in line with the National Park Service and the Department of Interior. That's where we pull it from. That's where they start classifying historic at. And so that way to make it defensible as well as just keep it in line with national standards. Keeping it at 50 is typically what occurs. In fact, Mount Pleasant used to have in their old village, it was, I think it was, if it was built before 1935, it was considered historic. They actually just went to the national standard of 50 because it was being considered slightly arbitrary as to why they chose that date. So that's just something to keep in mind with it. But that is, and that is just in terms of the profession of historic preservation, something that they're really struggling with right now, because you're absolutely right that 1973 is considered historic now. And that's, I mean, I pulled up a map for the March meeting, and basically everything inside 526 is 1973 or older. But with the other elements in here that it's weighed against is where that kind of helps counterbalance it.
Thank you.
Councilman Willie?
I'm actually agreeing with both Ken and John in that I think both of them have very valid points. John spoke in terms of his residents. But the last meeting, you and Councilman Moody spoke in terms of where we are right now. While we were talking, I Googled the mall. The mall was open in January of 1981, so it's 42 years old.
Mhm.
The city has rezoned for high dense apartments, even including an office building that can be 15 stories tall. So, in the virtual snap of a minute, this building is going to be about 50, or this complex is going to be 50 years old. But you got to have some kind of exemptions for commercial development like this. We have had enormous problems in trying to revitalize the mall. My understanding is that you now have more consolidated ownership. So I would hope and not pray, because I'm from West Ashley, as Diane is, born and reared here, that we have flexibility, and because if the open concept comes as Mount Pleasant has to this mall, I wouldn't want the 50 years aspect to be a hindrance to that. I don't think you would either, but I don't want to have the unintended consequence, the additional bureaucracy that, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, if you were alluding to, I'm agreeing. I don't think there's certain areas that need to have exceptions.
Yeah, before we continue the discussion, Eric, can you pull out the jurisdictional boundaries of the design review board? I know it's part of Daniel Island. Is really interesting that we're doing the Daniel Island, but the extent a huge part of West Ashley, rather limited, I think, jurisdictional. It's usually the street, yeah. So let's.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a comment while we're waiting, I don't think the proposed changes are intended to disallow any building over 50 years to get approval to be demolished. It just makes more clear the things that should be considered when approval is requested. And you know, I'll name a building, one of my favorites that I can't wait to get going is the Money Man Pond at the corner of Wahoo Road and Savannah Highway. It's over 50 years old. And yeah, we can consider that it doesn't look it's all gone and it's structurally not in good shape. So, but this helps define those things you consider, but it doesn't mean everything over 50 years doesn't get an approval.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Hold on one second, so we're gonna see, we have that, the jurisdictional part first. Can you sort of just run that through with the jurisdictional area is? And I'll come back to get into you, Charlie, just 1 second. Yeah, go ahead. Oh,
Even after I waited, try that again. All right. So what you see in purple is under DRB purview. It holds itself very much to the major corridors that we have around here. And it does come up onto the Upper Peninsula area. It does come up onto Cainhoy and Daniel Island. It is on James Island and Johns Island, as you can see. But it does hold itself to the major commercial corridors that you see highlighted in green.
So before you leave that, so point of references, the far right-hand corner, which is with the Charlestown Landing area, that whole area of Charlestown Landing, and then if you move left, that next quarter, no, the purple area, that area would be, Orange Grove Road.
Sam Rittenberg.
Okay. All right. Just sort of walk us through, if you don't mind, Eric, the rest of the area. Can you go to that?
Yeah, so I mean, the corridors that picks up are Sam Rittenberg, Old Town Road, St. Andrews Boulevard. This map is out of date. Magnolia Road actually only goes up to basically where you see the D right there right now. It does not span the entirety of Magnolia. It's just the Avondale commercial area, Savannah Highway, DuPont Road, Wapu Road, Orleans Road, Henry Tecklenburg, Glen McConnell, Bees Ferry, 526, Main Road for this area out here, River Road, Maybank, Central Park, Folly Road Boulevard, the James Island Connector, Harbor View Road, and that's the majority of them over on this side. Then you have King Street, Meeting Street, King Street Extension, and I-26 on the Upper Peninsula. 526 again out on Daniel Island, along with all the interior roads there, and Cainhoy, or Clements Ferry Road. And yeah.
So I think Charlie, you had bringing that next.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that, that we've had this comment about we're going to have these ugly 50-year-old shopping centers that are going to be eligible for protection from demolition. And I just want to reiterate that it's always been part of almost our mandate for higher density housing and the types of developments that we have been proposing. That is all in the commercial corridors, the high ground commercial corridor, and these defunct shopping centers. So, the conversion of the defunct shopping centers to housing and communities that function, that's really the highest priority. But I mean, if there's an historic building that's sitting in the middle of a mall somewhere, I don't know where it would be, but I mean, if it's worth a look, it's worth a look. But I think our higher priority on the shopping centers is for the higher density housing. That's what the plan called for.
I understand. I just don't want the unintended consequences to be additional bureaucracy for the person trying to make that conversion from what is to what we would like to see. But anyway, we'll have a discussion, a second chance at this.
The example that comes to mind that hits all of these points is 829 St. Andrews, where you have a defunct shopping center that's essentially 3 parcels. And the oldest building on St. Andrew Boulevard probably is the gas station building that's now the used car lot. I mean, that building dates probably 1950 to 1949, Donna, maybe you'll correct me on that, but it is well within that 50 years, but I don't think there's a single person here or anywhere else that's going to argue that the historic value of that building should hold up the development of that shopping center. I mean, there's no criteria that is anywhere that would mandate that. So there are some examples that are very, very clear where it's just a cinder block box and it's not historic, it's not architecturally significant, culturally significant, otherwise, but because it's in that corridor, I mean, it should go. It shouldn't hold up revitalization. It's just trying to say higher density. So I think that example is just a very clear one that we can all relate to.
Right, so do we need to take action, on this matter, this information, and it's going forward? But listen, this always comes down to a balancing act as to, not getting in the way and being an obstacle to revitalization, but there are very few and very precious, properties within the map we just saw up there. And we need to be, concerned about protecting and making sure that we maintain a character, which is what the principle God's plan was actually is that we don't upset the character of the neighborhood. And so that's what we're trying to do. And the global house would just fit perfectly into that, that criteria. Night house would be the other one. Those are things that we're trying to preserve, right? And those are things that we want to make sure that we don't demolish those things and keep the integrity of the neighborhood intact along those lines. So balance is the key issue here in making sure that we are able to accomplish and avoid those unintended consequences. Okay. All right, so thank you for that update, and we'll see where this goes for the next phase. Next item is an update on Sumar Street.
All right, yep, this is just gonna catch you guys up for what's been happening since the last time we met in March. April 4th, there was a presentation, City Council Ad Hoc Group. The majority of this meeting was held in executive session by City Council, and it debated the business talking points that were being developed in terms of the developer and where things were going with that one. When we came out of that one, no stance had been taken at that moment. June 20th, there was another City Council meeting. At this one, we presented 3 alternatives for design, one that had an underground parking deck, one that had an above ground parking deck, and one that had surface parking only. All 3 had the commercial, civic, and green space as part of them. There was a vote taken for support of the underground parking deck and to move that one forward. That vote failed as a tied vote. The next one, there was a motion, sorry, not vote, but there was a motion taken to support option 2, which was the one with the above ground deck. That motion was then voted to be deferred and sent to Community Development Committee. Next slide. Okay. At the July 20th, 2023 Community Development Committee, it was again presented and debated out. At that one, there was a motion to recommend to City Council for staff to look at Plan West Ashley to develop an option that includes a civic center and green space along with accompanying parking lot for those 2 uses. The report out of Community Development Committee was had at the August 15th City Council meeting, and at that meeting, City Council did vote on the motion as reported out, and it passed the motion. And then all this brings us up to last night, which is council communications at City Council. It has been requested to go back to Community Development Committee for further direction and clarification to staff. Then as part of this process, there may also be transportation, T&T or real estate committees to further the process along. I did forget, as part of the motion from Community Development Committee, it did ask for also to be looked at from Cosgrove Bridge down to Sumar Street as part of this redevelopment project.
Any questions, comments? Very good. Very thank you for that. All right, the final item is item number 7, St. Andrews Public Service District update, and Commissioner John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, I also want to apologize to my fellow commissioners, Mr. Chairman. I had a business interest that has kept me pretty preoccupied for the last 3.5 years, and it was sold in February. So I'm slowly getting to realize what it feels like to be a normal human being again. So my apologies for my dismal attendance over the past few years. Just real quick, seen a lot on social media, probably once a month. I'm sure y'all see it too. What's going on the old Piggly Wiggly site on Old Parsonage Road? As you may or may not know, The PSD acquired that property, via the Greenbelt Fund in Charleston County. It's going on now probably about 4 years ago. We immediately started planning for our new Station 3 to replace the old fire station. It's literally sitting in the marsh now on 61. COVID hit, we all know what that does to a building project. Nevertheless, we picked back up about 1.5 years ago, running full steam. The county has approached us, or did approach us, about housing a EMS unit there, basically 24/7. So we had to go back to our plan with Trident and Coast, who are Coast Architects, who are our design partners and build partners, redesign it. We're literally there. The design review has been approved from both sides, so we hope that if permitting goes as planned, that is a tricky area to do anything in, as the mayor well knows, but as well as city council members know, it is tough. We wanted to remove the concrete, and we were advised by the county that was probably not a good idea at this juncture, because it would require a complete set of stormwater permitting, and we would have to put in basically a permanent stormwater system and then go back and tear it out 2 years later for the station. So the good news is everything's well underway. We're moving forward very quickly now. As I said, we're expecting to go to permits and reviews here very quickly. So let your constituents know that, hey, we're not sitting here just waiting, and we do maintain the property. And certainly respond immediately to any complaints that if there is an abandoned anything, the call comes straight to us, and it is handled immediately. So hopefully we'll have a nice new shiny fire station in about 18 months, 18 months. And then the remainder of the parcel will be on-site stormwater retention as well as green space. So it'll be a nice addition to that part of town. Real quick, also our new environmental service building, which we moved into almost a year ago, it's up and running, going quite well. We've got 3 automated trucks now on the road, 1-armed bandits, as you see. We've kind of transitioned to that. It worked better for us. Also, you may not know that we're also in charge of streetlights. Not all of them, but some of them, kind of like where the blue trash cans are. We all know how that goes. And we are in the process of working with Dominion Energy to replace the old halide bulbs with LED bulbs. It's been kind of, our district manager, Christy Holders, is here. She'll disagree with me, but it is kind of humorous. We get calls from half the people saying, man, it's wonderful. There's so much more light now in my cul-de-sac. Then we get another 50% of the calls are, why is this light so bright? I can't sleep anymore. So we're trying to, but the new LED lights, they are much more efficient and they will last considerably longer. So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you. Just wanted to give you, if anybody here should have a question, feel free to reach out to me or to Christy directly. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
I would just go back to the Parsonage Road, and all of us are very much keenly aware of the, well, choose my words carefully, unsightly portion of the old Piggly site there on Old Parsonage Road, and there was a lot of work done to probably get control of that property, demolish the grocery store, and I think, Mr. Mayor, correct me on this, but I think that the city, contributed some Greenbelt funds to help with the process along. Unfortunately, I think on the corner, there's a Parker's Kitchen gas station plan for that area. Am I right on that?
At one time there was, that has now disappeared. So we're not aware of any activity for the corner currently. I mean, we're not really concerned. Our concern is 4.2 acres adjacent now. It was at one time that was the deal, but I think for numerous reasons that whole plan was pulled, and we were certainly in agreement. The last I've heard, now something may be in the works that we're not aware of, but I don't think that.
If there's an opportunity to gain control of that, because the plan list actually has very specific designs for that corner, which tied in perfectly with what the ESD wanted for that, which is this green basis retention pond, the placement of the fire station and the EMS station fit very nicely with that, and it just seemed that if that the gas station was gonna come there, this sort of just discombobulated the overall scheme of that, because it was going to be a very nice gathering place as well, green space and gathering space, so I don't know if there's some kind of coordination we can work with to try to get control of that property somehow, or it's in the county, it's not in the city limits, that particular corner, but it would be a shame that if we didn't have some kind of ability to your line is you saying that.
She's a throwing a racer at me.
I need to reach out to the current owner. It was never sold. They retained ownership.
These are.
So, John, could I ask a little further input or explanation of the green space and water retention behind where the fire station will go? And as an example, we're finally putting out for bid our water retention project over in Shadow Moss. But even though it's a water project, it will include a playground and a walking trail and all like that. And our goal is to make water retention areas as park-like as possible. And I don't know how far along y'all have come with those plans, but we certainly would encourage as much active and park-like features for that retention area.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, of course, your retention is job one. HLA is handling all of our civil work on the site, and they've showed us some really cool renderings, Central Park like looking stuff. It will be passive. It will be a passive green space, meaning we're not going to have jungle gyms. We're not going to have, that sort of thing, but it will be a walking path of sorts. We haven't gotten into the weeds that far with it yet because we're really more concerned about getting our firemen out of the marsh. But it will be more of a passive type neighborhood green space. Is probably the best way to describe it at this point.
Well, I think one of the things we have been failing on is making sure that we put you on the agenda for maybe not for every meeting, but at least on a quarterly basis or semi-annual basis to give us those kind of updates. That's really important. And maybe Eric can make a little note that we include you either every other meeting or every third meeting, whatever rotation. But
Well, Peter, it's not me. Again, I'm wearing the PSD
Yeah.
shirt. It's nice because you see what you see online and we've all seen it. So I feel like even though we're kind of sitting at different tables, it's still good to know, hey, this is what the left hand's doing. We kind of know what the right hand's doing because the right hand's in the paper and on the news. But hey, this is what we're doing.
yeah, but I think to sort of get an official report from.
And every couple of months would be one. We would love to be, kind of a permanent mission. I promise I'll be.
All right. So Eric, we're at that point of the agenda for public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
No, I haven't looked. 1 second. Okay. It's me, all right. Try that again. Right. I know. So we had one comment submitted by Anthony Bryant. That's there. And another one that was done by one of our administrative assistants to our agenda clerk, just to make sure that it was working. In terms of speaking list, looks like no one has formally signed up to speak, but does anyone here tonight want to speak? Got one. That's it. All right, so it'll go to Mr. Ward. Give me a second. Okay.
Let's do 2 minutes and can you summarize Mr. Bryant's comments that were submitted online? Summarize. You've been talking about.
So a brief summary of it would be something along the lines of several different magistrate courts of South Carolina dealing with Dominion energy rate increases. And Mr. Bryant also mentioning that his Bryant Group is filed with the city of Charleston.
Well done. Okay. All right. So two folks and just step up to the. And please identify yourself for the record.
My name is James Ward, retired from the College of Charleston, teaching preservation. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank the work that others have done, excuse me, to bring this report forward. I'm not sure what's going on here. Anyway, but also, some of the comments made about the 50-year-old rule, just coming from 20 years experience and trying to teach this and talk about it, I feel compelled to kind of address that to some extent. The 50-year rule is just a point of beginning. And that sort of triggers a discussion about whether or not this place is worth keeping or not. The whole essence of preservation, it seems to me, which is what Ken is driving at and others, of course, is to try to define more carefully what authenticity is for West Ashley. There's a lot of discussion about, well, it's not like it used to be, or, you know, things are going downhill. Well, this opens a forum for people to talk about what kind of place they're looking to have. Not that they don't want anything new, but the whole idea is that the history and the culture of the place gets wrapped into its future so that we don't lose track of who we are. And that is what preservation is all about, is pre-serving the future so that we stay on track and create something meaningful over time. That's the way all I want to say. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your time. I'm not sure,
We'll get your name for
all right, my name is Barbara Burnett, and I live in Carolina Terrace, right near Avondale, on Cobra Creek. And when I was sitting in my house several miles away, I heard that there was a discussion at 5:30 regarding West Ashley drainage. So I hope this is the right place at the right time. No, okay, well, I'm going to cover that another time. Thanks.
But we did have a very thorough update, I think back in either January or February of this year from our stormwater director as to projects throughout West Ashley dealing with stormwater issues and Councilman McNeil gave a very compelling update last night regarding, I think, on the flooding by the library area over there. So if there's something specific you're looking for, we can maybe direct you to the stormwater department.
It is, well, it would be regarding Cobra Creek and the culvert that doesn't supply the water under Highway 17 that comes up into my yard, and floods West Ashley, Bella Forest. That would be grand. Thanks.
Thank you. That's it. Going. I appreciate your attendance tonight. Very productive meeting, and we were able to get the minutes approved and definitely.
we do have one more other business item that I was able to finish at the last moment.
We'll go back to you.
All right, so this is going to be the first time many of you guys are seeing this. This is the final draft is how I'm putting it. So this is not final by any means, but it is more polished than normally what I send to you guys. This is the 2023 Plan West Ashley update. And so in it, we've kind of hit a monumental year this year. It's 5 years. So that is when we're supposed to start taking an even deeper look at this and really starting to relay what is working, what isn't in terms of Plan West Ashley. With that, I have this PDF. I also have some hard copies behind me. I'm happy to hand out to you guys. Please look it over and let me know, you know, what you guys feel needs to be amended, what needs to be you know, if I'm missing anything, that type of thing. With it, first page is just lifted straight out of Plan West Ashley to remind everyone what Plan West Ashley is regarding the vision. This is what our current overview is at. We're currently at 74% of the items in Plan West Ashley are being worked on or have been completed, which is pretty spectacular. So with that, and then, you know, we have obviously then some other items that are up next there. So I broke it down by chapter this time, very easy to read, where, you know, 92% of the items are completed or underway in the community design and development. Some of the highlights from that one, I mean, the easiest one on there was Adopt Plan West Ashley. Obviously, we got that one. We have a West Ashley community brand and identity. And then we're also coordinating implementation activities with Charleston County. Transportation, 68% of the items are being worked on or have been completed, such as the Ashley River pedestrian bridge, guidelines for West Ashley Greenway, district-wide transportation management studies have been completed in different areas. And then we're continuing to upgrade crosswalks and sidewalks all around the West Ashley area. For resilient infrastructure, 54% are completed or underway. And that includes greenbelt purchases along Church Creek, which we actually just heard about now. Thank you, John. So we have that one. We've also been doing other purchases with FEMA in the Shadow Moss area. We have recreational needs assessment in our new Parks and Rec master plan. We've updated our city stormwater development codes. We've adopted the DuPont Wapu drainage standards. And, you know, we're continuing to support the West Ashley Greenway master plan. 77% of the items under affordable housing have been worked on or completed. And that's things like funding and implementing stormwater infrastructure in Church Creek and DuPont Wapu. Assessment for affordability needs. Adjusting our zoning to allow more affordable housing options, encouraging diverse housing options, where we have our goal for that in the comprehensive plan, where we really laid out where it can go, how it can go, and then we're moving forward in our zoning code rewrite with the broadening that out, and then also additional tools to expand opportunities. The economic development, again, 74% of the items are being worked on. And that ranges everything from promoting West Ashley strengths in marketing and networking, goals for targeting industry, Citadel Mall planned unit development. We're doing great cross-departmental coordination when it comes to economic development projects, and then the expansion of MUSC and other medical facilities in the area. And then the rest of it, I won't bore you again, is just all 166 items with you know, the status and then how I came to the conclusion of that status. So I'll send around this PDF to you guys if you can look it over for me and let me know. Again, I've been compiling this since 2018, so there may be things that are outdated in it that I need to update even further. So please let me know. And let's yeah, just excited to get this out there.
Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to bring to the commission's attention that at our budget committee again this afternoon, another item that the planning department is proposing is really based on a lot of conversations that occurred this year, coming out of the Sumar Street redevelopment. They're proposing for next year's budget that we have basically a planning all the way to concept design of a rethink Sam Rip. So y'all know a few years ago we rethunk Folly Road, and it's a multi-jurisdictional effort, which this would be as well. It would need to include the DOT, the county, the public service district, all jurisdictions that touch Sam Rittenberg from one end to the other, and basically rethink the whole street, because it's still amazing to me whenever I drive down it, particularly that section from Charlestown Drive back to 61, as wide as that right of way is, there's no sidewalk. You know, there's no safe place for bikes and pedestrians. And if we're gonna realize, further aspects of Plan West, actually, we really need to figure out what we're gonna do different from, with Sam Rittenberg. And importantly, since the time, the plan was approved, DOT, South Carolina Department of Transportation, has, I don't know that they've, put a lot of this into practice yet, but last year they did officially, adopt a complete streets, policy, right? I see Katie's shaking her head, nodding her head over there. And so, it's time to put them to the task, don't you think? And, it is a DOT street. Let's go through a process and come up with a design and have DOT, in essence, put their money where their mouth is and make Sam Rittenberg a complete street for our city. So, I can't imagine this commission wouldn't be fully supportive of an effort like this. And if council will approve the funding for that planning effort, we would like to engage that and all our partners next year to do that.
I think, Mr. Mayor, part of that, we think Sam Red also included timing on several intersections along San Rittenberg and Old Town Road as well. So happy to see that, particularly my little pet project on Orange Grove Road and San Rittenberg will be addressed as well. What is our next meeting? Have we set a date for that?
It would be, November 8th right now.
Day after election.
Yes.
All right.
That's a terrible idea.
I don't make the calendar.
We'll revisit this. I just want to commend everybody for being here again tonight. This is very productive. We got a lot of good business and good reports. And again, thank you and your team. For doing all this and thank you for the update from services as well. We got our minutes passed. So I'm really happy with all that. And the focus, I just want to make this comment because Eric and I like him way too much and appreciate his patience with me, but we really are not taking off the implementation recommendations of Plan West actually. And there's sort of one of those kind of things you don't see what's going underground in a building project, but it's getting done. And we are very pleased with the progress we're making along certain areas. Still a lot of work to be done. Please take a look at what Eric has drafted. If you walk out, either by the PDF version or take a hard copy. Please do that and submit your comments or potential edits to Eric. If probably Eric, we should submit that report to council towards the end of the year. Once that's done. There be no